Chapter 1. I Drifted Across the Sea. At the end of 1849, a merchant ship, the Cape Town, sailed from Hong Kong to California, drifting on the vast ocean. The salty smell of seawater seeped into the narrow, dark cabin through the gaps in the deck. What followed was continuous ups and downs, and Liang Yao covered his mouth and almost failed to dig out the bread and boiled vegetables he had just swallowed. Liang Yao looked around. Under the dim light, there were sallow, weak, and bony faces. "Third brother, you don't look good." A middle-aged man with his hair braided on his head walked up to Liang Yao and asked with concern, "Second uncle, I'm fine." Liang Yao waved his hand and said he was fine. This middle-aged man's surname was Deng Mingyan, who was once a petty commander of the Guangdong Navy. Liang Yao's family background is much more prominent than that of Deng Yan. Liang Yao's grandfather was a military officer of the 5th rank, and the Liang family was considered a prominent scholarly family in Xiangshan. And Deng Yan was just a fisherman, and even Deng Yan's boss was helped by the Liang family to smooth the relationship and help him from being outsourced to become the boss. Only this time, because Deng Yan was dissatisfied that Shengguan wanted to take his daughter as a concubine, he killed Shengguan and fled overseas with his family. The Liang family suffered fraud in the Guangdong rural examination, and their grandfather lost his official position. Even the family's life was saved by selling off their property. The Liang family fell into ruin and inevitably headed for bankruptcy. Although fraud in scientific examinations was common in the Middle and Late Qing dynasty, once it happened, everyone was lucky to be able to save the lives of the whole family. The same goes for your Liang family. A son born to a wife is a son, but a son born to a concubine is not a son. I heard that Citigroup has discovered a gold mountain and is forcing you, an 18-year-old boy, to go dig for gold in San Francisco. Why don't you let the boss and the second child go? You have also been selected as a scholar, and your ability in reading is no worse than that of the eldest and second eldest brother." Looking at his young nephew, Deng Yan's eyes were full of pity, and he complained for his nephew, and of course for his sister, who was a concubine in the Liang family. When talking about the scientific examination, Deng Yan's wife, Shou, quickly winked at Deng Yan and signaled Deng Yan not to continue talking. After all, this was a sore spot for the Liang family. This is the pain point of the Liang family, but it is not the pain point of Liang Yao. In this desperate and suffocating era, it is not a bad thing for him to leave his hometown and go to California to start a career. In his last life, in order to escape from the misery of involution, he also went from a first-tier city in China to work on Wall Street in the United States and became a stock trader at the lowest level. He never thought that there would be no more papers, only more papers, and the intensity of work continued to increase. After arriving on Wall Street, his working hours changed from 996 to 007, until finally he died suddenly on the ferry to work in Manhattan. Perhaps in this life, in this virgin capital land full of golden opportunities, he can show off his skills, make a difference, become a legendary tycoon, and live a life that he could not even imagine in his previous life. Suddenly, a woman's shrill scream in the cabin brought Liang Yao's thoughts back to reality from his ethereal fantasy. Liang Yao followed the sound and saw his cousin Deng Ying in shock, curled up and leaning against Zhou, wiping tears. Behind Deng Ying were several ugly, smiling faces. The little girl is so pretty, and her butt and balls are more comfortable to the touch than Sister Yao. It's no wonder that Mr. Zhang Qian fell in love with your Deng family. Why don't I marry you as my aunt in San Francisco and live together? I don't mind that your Deng family is a fugitive." The speaker was Wu Daqi, a wretched young man who was a local gangster in Xiangshan. Due to his bad reputation and the difficult world, he could not survive in the local area. Hearing that a golden mountain had been discovered in Citigroup, he and a dozen of his friends pooled some money and bought a boat ticket to Citigroup to try it out. "Bah, you mangy dog." Deng Yan was furious, raised his fists, and was about to charge forward. In the cabin, except for the 5 Deng family members who were on the run together, who came forward to help, The other neighbors and fellow villagers all looked as if the matter had nothing to do with themselves and turned their heads to the side as if they had not seen anything. Seeing that there were only a few people on Deng Yan's side, but there were a large number of people on his side, Wu Daqi became more confident and laughed unbridled with his hands on his hips. Liang Yao was not used to traveling on sea ships, so he had to be taken care of by Deng Yan along the way. Of course, he couldn't just stand by and watch his cousin being bullied. Although he has the brains of a later generation who is in his 30s, his body is that of an 18-year-old scholar with no strength in his hands. Wu Daqi and the others are outnumbered, so they will definitely suffer in a fight. You, a helpless scholar, come to join in the fun and ask for a beating? Seeing Liang Yao standing up and approaching unsteadily, Wu Daqi said disdainfully. In the past, he would never have dared to speak in this tone to the son of an official and gentry in front of him. Thinking of this, Wu Daqi couldn't help but straighten his waist by 3 points, and he became very proud. Third brother, it's better to leave this kind of matter to us roughnecks. You should go back, Deng Yan advised in a low voice. He was already satisfied that Liang Yao had such a heart. After all, I am also half a Deng family member. How can I not care if my own family members are bullied? Liang Yao said loudly. Liang Yao's words won the favor of several Deng family disciples, but Wu Daqi still looked disdainful. No matter what do you care about? The green-skinned gangsters started laughing and didn't take Liang Yao seriously at all. Apologize to my second uncle and cousin otherwise. What else? Throw you into the sea and feed the fish, Liang Yao said very seriously, and then there was a burst of laughter. It was obvious that Wu Daqi and the others did not take Liang Yao's words seriously. Just you. Last month, the ghost guy suspected that Chen Wei was infected with the plague. The ghost guy threw him into the sea, without saying a word. In the eyes of those ghost guys and water pilots, we are not human beings at all, but white silver and golden gold. At this point, the smiles of Wu Daqi and others finally froze, and they began to chew on Liang Yao's words. Although I don't know if this kid's words have enough weight to make the ghost guy throw him into the sea, it is true that the ghost guy threw Chen Wei into the sea. Thinking of the splashing sound of falling into the water, Wu Daqi still had lingering fears. And on the entire ship, apart from the pilot who worked for Gui Lao, the only one who could talk to Gui Lao was this young boy. Liang Yao, Captain Frank is looking for you. Pilot Zhang Bingliang stamped his feet on the deck, stuck his head out, and shouted to Liang Yao in the cabin. He immediately covered his nose in disgust and left, not wanting to stay in this damn place for a moment longer. Whether you want to apologize or die without leaving a whole body is up to you. Liang Yao said a harsh word and left the cabin without looking back. Liang Yao naturally knew what Captain Frank was looking for. The Cape Town's wear fell ill while passing through Malacca, and Frank had to leave him nearby in Singapore. In this era, sanitary conditions were limited. There were too many uncertainties in long-distance voyages, and crew attrition was common. Frank originally planned to recruit weighers in Singapore, but Liang Yao volunteered and said that he could be a qualified weigher. After all he has on his body now is the 8 Spanish eagles that his mother gave him before leaving, and the monthly salary of the ordinary crew members on this ship is much higher than this number. Liang Yao wanted to earn some money to buy some supplies. California was still a wild land, and supplies were extremely scarce. Even if there were, prices were extremely high due to the gold rush. With the 8 Spanish silver dollars in his hand, he could barely afford a few meals. At first, Frank refused to hire Liang Yao, who had no experience as a weigher. Even though Liang Yao showed him his English proficiency and accounting ability, Frank still shook his head nonchalantly. It was not until Liang Yao made an offer that he could not refuse. He only wanted half of the weigher's salary. Only then did Frank burst into a long-lost smile, nodded, and said a long-lost yes. If nothing else happens, the Cape Town will arrive in Panama tomorrow. Here is the list of goods to be shipped tomorrow. Go to the cargo hold to check the goods. The captain's cabin at the stern is spacious, bright, and clean. Although it is on the same ship as the so-called guest cabin below, it is like two different worlds. Frank was very reassured about Liang Yao after his previous experiences, and he even raised the idea of hiring Liang Yao as a crew member. After all, he often sails to China, and it would be of great benefit to him to have someone on board who is proficient in English and the local language. The key is that this young man from the Qing dynasty is so cheap, and he does things neatly and beautifully. Hiring him is definitely a good deal with a guaranteed profit and no loss. We will arrive in Panama tomorrow. It would be great if Panama could open a canal. In this case, we would be able to reach California long ago. Liang Yao is no stranger to Panama, but now there is no trace of the Panama Canal. When this canal was completed and open to navigation, the Qing dynasty was dead, and World War I was in full swing. During this period, the people of the Qing dynasty were still ignorant of the outside world, and very few people could name the names and capitals of several major Western countries. Arrogant and ignorant, this is Frank's view of the Qing people in this period. It was beyond Frank's expectation that the Qing boy in front of him knew so much about Panama. In the early years, President Bolivar of Gran Colombia had the idea of building the Panama Canal. Later, the Republic of New Granada also proposed having Britain, France, the United States, Spain, and other countries work together to build the canal, but in the end it was abandoned due to various factors. Yes, after tomorrow's work is done, your work will be over. This is your salary. Captain Frank took out a bag of coins and threw it on the table, squinting his eyes and showing an unconcealable smile. From Singapore to Panama, you served the Cape Town for a total of 57 days. I am always generous and paid you 2 months' compensation for your 57 days of service. This is the 13 shillings you deserve. Frank was a typical example of getting a bargain and acting well. The contract they signed at the beginning was a 26 shillings per month contract, including short-term allowances for the entire voyage, which was the total of a normal wear. According to the contract, the money was also paid by the British Steamship Company, which owned the Cape Town. Liang Yao weighed the 13 shillings in his wallet, knowing that the rest of the money would naturally go into the pocket of Frank, a kind man. However, Liang Yao had no intention and was unable to argue with Frank. He just took advantage of the situation and made a request to go ashore to purchase some supplies to California tomorrow. Frank, who was in a good mood, readily agreed to this reasonable request. 13 shillings and 8 Spanish silver dollars. This is all Liang Yao's property, his first pot of gold. Liang Yao was thinking about how to spend the money, and his understanding of the history of the California gold rush was very rudimentary. It's not that people of later generations don't understand American history, but their understanding focuses on World War II and the United States that became the world's hegemon after the war, and they know very little about the United States before its rise. Liang Yao is no exception. He is familiar with every major military operation and economic policy that the United States participated in during World War II and after the station, but he only has a relatively superficial understanding of the United States at this time. After thinking for a moment, Liang Yao decided to use the money to buy pans, shovels, picks, and other gold mining tools. The first millionaire in the history of the American West, an ordinary store owner, Sam Brannan, made his fortune by relying on his monopoly on gold mining tools. Buying these items and selling them in California would definitely make a huge profit. Chapter 2. Flash Hutch Gun. In addition to gold mining tools, what Liang Yao wanted most was a gun for self-defense. At this time, California was the most remote place in the United States, not even a state in the United States. The mountains are high, and the emperor is far away, and it is a gold-producing area. There is naturally no order in such a place. It is an out-and-out world of the jungle and the strong. He is now so weak that he can't even deal with a few ruffians on the ship, let alone those gold diggers from all over the world in the gold-producing area. The people who can survive to this place are basically not good people. A musket, preferably a short gun that is easy to carry around, would at least give him a sense of security. It's just that with his current financial resources, he can't afford the price of a musket. Take the Brown Bess musket that is about to be withdrawn from active service in the UK. The low-cost Indian monkey version of the Brown Bess costs about £2. And now he doesn't even have a pound. Hello, Liang. The oncoming third officer, Sven, patted Liang Yao's shoulder like an old friend he had known for a long time. Sven was from Denmark, and he was not as good as his name. Although his name was Sven, he did not look gentle at all, but looked like a rough man. Because Sven was more easygoing and talkative, unlike the other arrogant British crew members on the ship, who acted condescending and looked down on people of color, Sven became the crew member Liang Yao was most familiar with during this long voyage. Of course, it is also a tool to relieve boredom by talking to each other. Somehow, Sven got along very well with the common sailors on the ship, while the captain and officers seemed to dislike their colleague. Sven was originally the chief mate of the Würzburg merchant ship of the Danish Asiatic Company. After the dissolution of the Danish Asiatic Company, the Danish East India Company, Sven, who was burdened with debts, came to work for the British Steamship Company to pay off his debts. Could this have something to do with Sven being Danish? Or is it that Siwen is in heavy debt and is afraid that Siwen will borrow money from them? So he alienates Siwen? While making random guesses, Liang Yao's eyes fell on the two flash cap guns less than a foot long on Sven's waist. These are good things. Are you interested in it? This is a brand new flash cap gun produced by the famous Birmingham Arsenal. I bought it from a down-and-out aristocratic gentleman in Calcutta for a full £40. We are friends, and if you like it, I don't mind taking a small loss and selling you a handful for £15. Sven took out a flash cap from the holster and introduced his gun to Liang Yao like an enthusiastic salesman. He could tell that the Oriental boy was very interested in his gun. It's very new. It's so new that the logo and noble emblem on it are worn, and the rifling is smoothed. Liang Yao would not believe that Sven, who was so poor that he had to drink brandy and rum mixed with water, could afford a huge sum of £40 to buy a gun. But the Birmingham Armory logo on the gun is real. Sven thought too highly of him. If he had £15, why would he go all the way to California to mine? Wouldn't it be nice to just go back to the Qing dynasty to buy a house, buy land, and have a concubine? £10. It can't go any lower. Sven gritted his teeth and said with a painful expression as if someone had cut a piece of meat from him, "To be honest, I don't even have a pound on me right now." Liang Yao told the truth. Roll. Sven rolled his eyes, put his gun back in his holster, and turned his face faster than turning the pages of a book. "But I can share a business opportunity with you, one worth thousands of pounds in exchange for your gun." Liang Yao smiled faintly. He didn't have the £10, but he wanted Sven's gun. Of course, Sven, who has been walking on the sea for many years, does not believe that Liang Yao, a young boy, has any business opportunities worth tens of thousands of pounds. He only thinks that Liang Yao is bragging and does not take it seriously. It only costs 7 or 8 cents to buy a pan from Boston and only a dozen cents to buy a shovel. But in the gold fields of California, a pan easily fetched $6 and a shovel easily fetched $30. Of course, if you like gold, you can even directly exchange it for an equivalent amount of gold. The most valuable thing in the gold mining area is gold, and the least valuable thing is gold. Liang Yao said matter-of-factly. Liang Yaoning's price was so detailed that it didn't look like he was talking nonsense, but the profit was so high that it was suffocating. Selling black slaves and piglets were not so profitable. Oh my God. Sven's attitude toward Liang Yao immediately changed 180 degrees, but he did not believe Liang Yao's words easily. Instead, he asked Liang Yao the source of the news to determine whether the news was reliable. "My relative told me that he was in California, and it was his letter that told us to go to California." This sentence is half true and half false. The letter from a fellow countryman telling him that there is gold in California is true. As for the prices of pans and shovels, he made it up. There are countless places where gold is discovered every year around the world, but how many of them are real? Only those of you who are desperate are willing to sell your property in exchange for a boat ticket to the illusory gold mountain you talk about. Sven had already heard the news about the discovery of gold in California, but that was just a hearsay. Unless he saw it with his own eyes, Sven would never believe these unreliable and exaggerated rumors. Liang Yao shrugged, feeling a little disappointed. This rude-looking Nordic man was not as easy to fool as he thought. But based on our friendship, I am willing to take a gamble. If you lie to me, you will end up like this seabird. When Liang Yao moved to leave, Sven suddenly took out his musket from the holster, put on the flash cap, and pulled the trigger at the seabird hovering above his head. As a thunderous gunshot sounded, a seabird fell into the sea, and the familiar plop sound reached Liang Yao's ears. The sudden sound of gunfire made Liang Yao pause. His legs, covered by his robe, seemed to be trembling, and a slight chill came from his back. "It's yours. I suppose and shovels cost about the same in Panama as they do in Boston." Sven put the old musket with a hot barrel into Liang Yao's hand. The things Liang Yao mentioned were not valuable items. He was willing to take a gamble, and even if he lost, he wouldn't lose much. A few good-natured British sailors were surrounding the cabin door, watching the Qing people fighting below the deck. They burst into joking laughter from time to time, as if they were watching a group of monkeys fighting. Liang Yao returned to the cabin fiercely, with a musket in his hand. Several descendants of the Deng family had already been knocked to the ground. Deng Yan's legs and right hand were tightly hugged by 3 green-skinned gangsters, making it impossible to move them in the narrow cabin. The left hand that was still able to move tightly grasped Wu Daqi's braid and wouldn't let go. Not to be outdone, Wu Daqi used all his strength to punch Deng Yan in the face. Wu Daqi was in the middle of the beating when he suddenly received a slap on his stubbled forehead. Enduring the pain, he turned around and was about to have a seizure when he saw the black muzzle of the gun pointing at his head. "Third brother. No. Third master. Young Master Liang, please spare my life. I will never dare to do this again. I will apologize to these masters now." Wu Daqi ignored Deng Yanjing's pull on his braid and hurriedly knelt down and kowtowed to beg for mercy. The rest of the accomplices were at a loss when they saw this, and allowed Deng Yan, who was bruised and swollen, to break away from them. "Killing you with one shot will give you an advantage. Who in Xiangshan doesn't know about the things you did in Xiangshan? You should be thrown into the sea, and let the fish eat your flesh and bones one by one," Liang Yao said angrily. Deng Yan had been a soldier, used shotguns, and had seen the power of foreign guns. He was worried that Liang Yao was too excited and went off the rails. After all, they were on the Ghost Guy's ship, and they had to look at the Ghost Guy's face to act. It will be difficult to end the situation if someone loses his life. "Third brother, let him apologize and spare him a life." Although beaten, Deng Yan still maintained a calm mind. Liang Yao just happened to borrow Poxydonkey. Although Sven's old fox gave him the gun, he didn't give him the flash cap or bullets. The thing in his hand could only be used to scare people. "Second uncle, it's their fault. You can't get this beating in vain. The ghost doctor on the ship demands a lot of money for consultation." Liang Yao's angry voice echoed in the cabin, and his sharp eyes were directed at Lu Daqi. "Our brothers will pay for the diagnosis fee, and our brothers will pay for it. It's because I, Lu Daqi, didn't control that my hands are nothing." Lu Daqi hurriedly took out 2 pieces of inyang and a few pieces of broken silver, and at the same time urged his accomplices around him to pay. Under LV Daqi's urging, the friends reluctantly collected some silver coins. Liang Yao stopped when he saw that it was good. Seeing that Lu Daqi and the others paid, they did not push Lu Daqi and the others to the dead end. The rabbit would bite people if they were pushed hard. Fights between Chinese were minor, but the nature of the incident was different. A white sailor who was watching the fun soon informed Captain Frank of the situation. "What's going on?" The pilot, the immigration agent Huang Bingliang, followed behind Frank and sternly questioned everyone in the cabin. "Where did you get your gun?" Frank noticed Liang Yao's musket hidden in his clothes. Since Liang Yao understood English, Huang Bingliang no longer translated the conversation between Frank and Liang Yao. "This is a gift given to me by Third Officer Sven." Liang Yao replied in English, "It's just a gun, without a flash cap or bullets." Flack's face brightened slightly when he heard this. Seeing that nothing serious happened, he left with a few words of reprimand. He is not willing to interfere with matters between Chinese people. All he cares about is how many people can make it to California alive in the end, and how much commission he can get from it, nothing more. After Frank left, Liang Yao pulled up the curtain in the middle of the cabin and called Deng Yen and several young people from the Deng family to the end of the cabin. "How many of you should divide the money? Tomorrow the foreign ship will dock. You can go ashore to find a good doctor to treat your injuries." There is a ship's doctor on the Cape Town, but the ship's doctor is an extremely racist, white supremacist. The most common way to treat Chinese people is to hold their noses from a distance and direct the sailors to take the sick Chinese people out of the cabin and throw them into the sea. Liang Yao didn't expect such a person to treat these children of the Deng family. Liang Yao divided the money into 6 parts and asked each of them to take 1 part. "These are just skin injuries, no injuries to muscles or bones, so it's not a problem." Deng Wenyao said it was okay, but his body was very honest, and he stretched out his hand towards the money. Deng Wenyu stopped him. "Without Third Brother, I don't know how this matter would end today. Third Brother should have a share of this money." Deng Yen was also convinced and took out 3 eagle coins. "If the Third Brother doesn't accept this money, our family will not dare to ask for it." "In that case, count me in." Liang Yao didn't show any pretense and accepted the 3 eagles generously. After everyone had distributed the money, Deng Yen said to Liang Yao with a worried look on his face, "People like Wu Daqi were only convinced when they saw that you had a foreign gun in your hand. They convinced you with their mouths, but in their hearts they wanted to cut you into pieces. You still have to be wary of him in the future." Liang Yao smiled bitterly and shook his head and said, "Wu Daqi and his like are unlikely to become great. They are not worth mentioning. What I am worried about now is not Wu Daqi, but what I will do after arriving in San Francisco." How to establish himself after arriving in California is what Liang Yao is most worried about now. It is now the end of 1849, and James Marshall first discovered a large amount of gold in the American River in January 1848. Nearly 2 years have passed, and they have lost the opportunity to prospect for gold. Many gold mining teams from the eastern United States not only have professional gold mining knowledge, their organizational forms are also more mature, and of course, they have more people. What can he do to compete with those 49-year-old miners? If the more than 120 Chinese workers on the ship could be united and organized, it would be a force that cannot be underestimated. But this idea is just a fantasy. The Chinese on board are very complex. In addition to Xiangshan people, there are also people from Guangzhou, Chaos Han, Zhaoqing, Hakkas from northern Guangdong, and even a dozen Fujianese. With his current prestige, trying to unite people from different regions and clans is tantamount to wishful thinking. A more realistic idea is to unite these Deng family members first and establish a foothold in San Francisco first. Deng Chongchong sighed. "It's rare that you can think of this at such a young age. It's getting late, so go to bed early. Outsiders, your second uncle can't guarantee it, but your second uncle can still unite the Deng family's bastards into one rope." Liang Yao also felt a little sleepy, so he stopped talking and climbed onto the hammock made of manila canvas with his musket in hand. Chapter 3: Specialties of California. Early the next morning, the Cape Town arrived at the port of Panama. This is a busy port with numerous merchant ships coming and going. Gran Colombia, which Bolivar worked so hard to build, lasted only 13 years before falling apart. At this time, Panama was part of the Republic of New Granada, which later became Colombia. Panama did not become independent from Colombia until 1903, when the United States intervened. After completing the weighing work, Liang Yao felt relieved and took the time to go ashore to purchase supplies. Captain Frank was dissatisfied with the purchase of too many supplies. Finally, with the gentle talk of the third mate, Frank reluctantly agreed to ship Liang Yao's supplies, but he had to pay 5 shillings for transportation. In Panama, Frank accepted a new group of gold diggers. This made the already overcrowded Cape Town even more crowded. There are 3 gold mining routes in the United States to California. One is all the way west to Independence, Missouri, to complete the final supplies, and then complete the last 1,900 kilometers to California. This route spans the entire North American continent. If everything goes well, it will only take half a year to reach California. If you have some money, you can afford a boat ticket, which is equivalent to $60,000 to $80,000 US in later generations, or you can choose to take a boat in the eastern United States and sail 13,000 kilometers from South America to California, which takes about 2 months. This is the second route, which is also relatively safe and quick. As for the third route, it is more compromise. First, take a boat from the eastern United States to eastern Panama, then cross the plague-ridden isthmus of Central America and go to the west coast of Panama to take a downwind boat to California. These 3 routes are extremely dangerous, but for the sake of gold, humans are willing to take greater risks. In the small port of San Francisco, Sam Brannan, a man who is just past his 30s, is standing on the lighthouse looking down at the emerging city below. It was he who single-handedly ignited the gold rush in the entire United States. In 1848, before the gold rush, the non-Indian population of California, which was 410,000 square kilometers, was only 14,000. The population of San Francisco, later San Francisco, was only 500 or 600. Of California's 14,000 non-Indian population, 7,000 were Mexicans before 1848.